At this point, I want to bring up Matt Wetherington, and he's an Atlanta-based attorney. In 2014, Matt was one of the youngest attorneys ever selected for the Daily Report's On the Rise, an annual list of attorneys who make a difference. And the following year, he was inducted into the ALM Verdicts Hall of Fame for receiving one of the largest verdicts in Georgia. Matt will introduce our next speaker, so I want to, at this moment, bring Matt up. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Wetherington. The Seventh Amendment guarantees the right to a trial by jury in civil cases. And the Seventh Amendment is under near constant attack by powerful corporate interests. And this attack is almost nearly one-sided. And that is because the primary beneficiaries of the Seventh Amendment are often too injured to speak out, live their lives in disability, or are muzzled by silence agreements, confidentiality agreements that will force them to keep their mouths shut. Often we do not get to hear the voice of the people who benefit and see the face of the people who have benefited from the Seventh Amendment. Kristen Rose is an exception to that rule. Kristen was involved in a very serious automobile accident that she will tell you about, and went through several years against a corporation that buried her in tens of thousands of pages of documents to try and hide well-known and publicly disclosed defects in the vehicle that she was driving. Kristen Rose will come on up. This is Kristen Rose. Kristen shouldn't have to be here today. She should be at home with her son. But she has chosen to move her life forward and to speak out and to help others protect the right to the Seventh Amendment. Go ahead. This is Kristen Rose.
Thank you, Matt. I just want to say, first off, I feel honored and grateful to be here. So thank you to the American Tort Law Museum, Rob Nader, Rick Newman, and with Matt. I just want to hope that I can be able to provide you a good plaintiff's perspective in telling you my own personal story. Never in a million years would I have ever imagined I'd be standing here and speaking about it. But I had borrowed a friend's car, a 1998 Ford Explorer, and just jumped on the interstate. And I just jumped on the interstate and was driving for a few minutes. Next thing you know, I'd heard a loud pop. Not knowing that was from our car, it immediately turned left and hit into a cement barrier. And from that, it flipped several times, and throughout that, it ejected me out the back of the rear trunk window. And I was landed in the middle of the interstate, laying there conscious and alert and trying to figure out what just happened. I was finding myself questioning, am I okay? What's wrong with me? Trying to get up, and nobody would let me get up, not in any pain at that time, but all I could think about was my son and how I needed to be able to pick him up, otherwise I was going to be late. Next thing you know, I was in the back of an ambulance. I kept asking everyone, what's wrong with me? Am I going to make it? And no one would tell me, and I ended up hearing the sound of a helicopter and hearing a paramedic telling me that they're fixing to land the bird. So I knew that I was not in good shape at that time. I ended up getting life flighted up to Atlanta Medical's, one of the Atlanta trauma hospitals, and was in a medically induced coma. I woke up about a week later with a mom telling me what had happened and what my injuries were. From that, I had sustained, my head was busted open from here to here, and about 46 staples. And then my right hip was completely fractured and shattered, so reconstructed with about 56 staples on the right. And then I had severe road rash burns on my back from being skidded across the highway. I was going to be in a wheelchair for a while, and most of all, it was devastating for me not being able to be there for my son and not being able to be the mom that I wanted to be. All my hair was shaved off. I was young, still am, but that was a big deal. That really, I was devastated. And at the time, I had just 8 days before my crash, I had lost my health insurance. I was on my parents' insurance, And when I turned 26, I was off of that. And then 8 days later, this happened. So it was definitely a learning experience from that. But from there, I was wheeled out of the hospital once released, and they wheeled me out to my mom's car, put me in there, and we get in, and then they take the wheelchair back when I didn't even have a ride or a wheelchair to get out or a way for me to get out once I did get home. So there was a lot of changings and learning that we need to do, and figuring out how we can get medical supplies and equipment, medications. And so from that, unfortunately though, I had a Georgia State trooper that ended up that was there at the time of the wreck, and he took the tire that had fallen off or came off my car and put it in the back, and fortunately I had told my parents that he thought that tire was maybe the possible cause of my wreck. So he recommended for them to look further into, and they did. They hired an attorney on my behalf, and after I got out, excuse me, and started learning more about what exactly had happened to me, I did a lot of research, and I ended up hiring and firing three different attorneys in total before I could finally get on to the next. But from that, I did a lot of research, and I was able to find an attorney that had been recognized for his great work and trial or tire cases, and that was Matt Weatherington. And from there, I was able to express to Matt that I really wanted to be fully involved and that I needed 100% communication. And from then, and still to this day, he's been excellent as far as giving me all the communication, and every documentation or information on my case, he gave that to me, which allowed me the opportunity to be able to learn about the negligent and reckless behavior that Fordstone and Bridgestone acted upon. My particular tire was a Firestone Wilderness AT, and it had been originally equipped on the '98 Ford Explorer I had been driving as a spare tire. And it was 14 years old, dangerously old, and from there, we learned that the tire had been under multiple recalls, and from that, we ended up having Matt, and I learned about a lot of the case and what they did. And throughout that, it was hearing about just the carelessness that Ford and Bridgestone had, and the way they treated me. I mean, they did the whole blame game to where, like during depositions and all, just putting the blame onto me and saying that I was a careless driver. If I had properly maintained my car right, or my tires were inflated at the correct pressure, then that wouldn't have happened. They also basically said that sorry about that, but they basically said that with that, they had the CEOs of Bridgestone went on to the news and indicated their tires were superior and on world-class levels, and that right there really just kind of got with me. And from that, I have been able to start a non-for-profit, Auto Accident Survivors of Georgia, and that is a mission of mine that I feel going through this case has really taught me the way that not having the resources and having a defective tire. When you buy a product, then you should have a safe product, and if it's not, then it should definitely be. They should have taken accountability and responsibility, and Ford and Bridgestone did not. They did the blame game, and Ford had blamed Bridgestone for saying that their vehicles would not have flipped if they didn't have defective tires, and Bridgestone said that, their cars were made not being able to control the rollover. So they both blamed each other, which ended up ending their nearly 100-year relationship. And from that, more importantly, they point the finger on me and other victims like me, that and that's what made it really hard, was to see how they treated me, and with what they just decharacterizing me. I mean, just everything that they did. There was no accountability in that, and that really angered me, more so than it did upset. Something like this that can cause someone's life, not so much mine, but my son's life, to have been affected the way it has, is wrong, and they need to be held accountable. So it was very important for me to stay involved in my case, more so than probably what Matt wanted me to be. But I'm very thankful for that, and from it, I've now started this nonprofit to where we can provide resources for anyone else that sustained similar injuries, and to hopefully be able to advocate for safer roads, and specifically into tires. And so I just want to, I hope that my story was able to give you guys a better understanding on it, and I appreciate you guys allowing me this time to be able to speak about it.
As Ralph mentioned, I did practice this sort of law for 30 years, and it's worth noting the tremendous courage it takes for plaintiffs, for people who have been wrongfully injured, to not only come out of the terrible injuries, but to overcome that sense that they're going to be making trouble if they file a lawsuit. It is a real act of courage. And so I've often said, when I give tours at the museum, and forgive me because it's not a great analogy, but in some ways, plaintiffs and their lawyers are akin to first responders. Now, they're not running into burning buildings, don't get me wrong, but they are important because they get involved with dangerous or defective products or chemicals or whatever it might be before there is a recall, before there is administrative or governmental regulations. It's the hard work of lawyers like Matt or Jason or Greg. We have a lot of lawyers here. It's the hard work of that, coupled with the courage of the plaintiffs, that lets this system exist to hold wrongdoers accountable and to protect not only the people that have been injured by giving them compensation, but by disclosing hidden wrongdoing in court and the deterrent power of a verdict. It makes products safer for everybody. So this will be on the quiz. The 3 benefits of tort law are compensation for the injured, disclosure of wrongdoing that's often been hidden, and then deterrence of continuing bad conduct or continuing unsafe products. So I want to thank Kristen for your courage and for the work that you're doing still. It's tremendous and wonderful. And thank you, Matt, for being what a good lawyer should be, a zealous advocate.